Not only how to improve your self-image, how to transform it. Keep watching. This is Life Mastery Gym, and I'm Damon, and I teach people just like you cutting-edge NLP processes and techniques so that you can master your life and take charge of your destiny. So if that sounds good, make sure you click that subscribe button right down here so you can get these videos on a regular basis. The Swish Pattern, which is a very popular and classic NLP process to get rid of compulsive habits, actually was the inspiration for the self-concept model created by Steve Andreas. So what's so important about the self-concept model? In my opinion, and the opinion of pretty much anyone who has actually used it, it is the most powerful NLP process there is. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why. I've been working with this model for several years now, and Steve Andreas was actually my mentor until he passed away about 2 years ago. And I'm the only person he has endorsed to teach this model. Now, if you're a little impatient and you want to get right to work on doing some of this work, you can start by going to the description below, click that link, and it will bring you to an assessment that will walk you through the first stages of this process. I urge you to watch the entire video and wait to the end of the video to do that. But like I said, if you're kind of impatient, you want to get right to it, I understand. Just click that link down below. Throughout this video, if you have any comments or questions, make sure you post them right down below in the comments section. I will respond to you. Now, I've done a few videos on the NLP Swish Pattern. The reason why is because when I was coming through training with NLP, I had actually learned the Swish Pattern. It's one of the first patterns you learn in a practitioner training, but it didn't work for me. And I didn't know why it didn't work. I just thought, okay, well, maybe it works for some people and it seems like an interesting pattern, but you know, it doesn't work for me and I'm not going to use it with anybody, because if I can't make it work, then what's the point? And it wasn't until later when I started learning the self-concept model where Steve Andreas refers to the Swish Pattern as part of the inspiration to create the self-concept model. And he mentioned some of the aspects of the Swish Pattern, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. That's not how I learned the Swish Pattern. And when I told him that, he was kind of like, okay, well, where did you learn the Swish Pattern from? And actually, he knew where I had learned the Swish Pattern from, but it surprised him. And when he looked into it, I showed him my manual from the training that I learned it from. And he's like, okay, well, it's not correct. And this is how you do it. So in those videos that I've done already, I go through the proper and correct way to do the Swish Pattern. And if you don't do it the way that it's supposed to be done, don't be surprised if it doesn't work. I will link those videos to this video so you can go and watch those as well. I'm not going to go into all of the mechanics and the steps of the Swish Pattern because, like I said, I've done other videos on that already. What I'm going to talk about here is how this pattern inspired a model that, to me, like I said, is the most powerful, most transformative, not only NLP model, any model, anything that I've seen before. This is the basis of my entire coaching practice, and it's primarily what I focus on whenever I teach. Okay, so let's dive into the Swish Pattern and how we go from Swish Pattern to self-concept. So the Swish Pattern is a pattern that you would typically use when you have a habit you want to break or some sort of compulsion, nail biting, overeating, smoking, anything like that. So what happens is when you have a compulsion, it's because you're overly associated. And what do I mean by associated? So there's associated and there's disassociated. Associated means I'm fully in my body, which is usually how we want to live the majority of our lives. But we can also disassociate, like we sort of step outside of ourselves and can watch ourselves or observe ourselves. Now, this is really good to do if you're feeling stuck or you want to get a different perspective. And a lot of times, like if you've seen yourself on video and you didn't really think too much about, you know, how you were being or how you were talking or how you were acting, and then you see that and you go, oh my God, like, I don't like the way I look on video. And maybe because of that, you make some sort of corrections to your behavior. That's what's good about disassociating. You can kind of step out, step back, get a different perspective of yourself, and then change a habit or change something that you're doing that you don't like. But with a compulsion, it's difficult because you're so associated. So we want to break that compulsion pattern. We want to break that association. And in breaking that association, we want to replace it with something else. We want to replace it with a disassociated image of yourself. Disassociated meaning you see yourself And we want this image to be a representation of the ideal you, the you who has solved this compulsion problem. But not only that, the ideal you who has solved any problems. It's, like I said, the ideal you. So when you see this image of yourself, it's extremely motivating. And the way it was taught to me, and the way it's often taught wrong, is they'll teach you to have this image of yourself in a particular context, in the context of wherever you're experiencing the compulsion, and doing a different behavior. Now, I'm not going to get into why that is incorrect. You'll have to watch those other videos, but that is an incorrect way to teach it, and an incorrect way to do this. When that happens, so I'll kind of draw a line here. So you're going along your life, and then maybe you're tempted. You're tempted by that cigarette. You're tempted to overeat. You're tempted to bite your nails, whatever it is. And when you would normally feel compulsed to keep doing it, and like it's out of your control and you can't do anything about it, when you do the swish pattern correctly, what will happen is, instead of continuing in this direction, the image that you swish up sort of derails that. And you see this image of your ideal self, and you don't continue on with the compulsive behavior. You go in a different direction toward the ideal you, because that's a motivating image. You see yourself and you go, oh yeah, that's the me I want to be. So I'm not going to continue on with this compulsive behavior. I'm going to move in this direction. Now, when Steve when he would do the swish pattern, he really started to take notice of how powerful this was and how well it worked. And so he started asking himself, what is this really about? And he started to realize that this was self-image work. You're creating a new self-image, and it's changing your behavior. It's interrupting a dysfunctional or destructive pattern of behavior because you're now focused on a new self-image. And he got to thinking about that more and more, and realizing, okay, well, this generalizes so widely because there is no particular behavior that you're doing in this ideal image. It's in no particular context. So it generalizes very widely, and it creates this incredible change. And so he got to thinking about this, and he's like, okay, so we link this to the behavior, and if I can do this enough times with enough behaviors that I want to alter and I want to change, what is ultimately happening here? And he realized, well, what's happening here is you're changing at the identity level. You're changing at the self-concept level, and you can call that ego, you can call it self-image, but what he also realized is that it's probably more than just an image. There are probably other things going on here than just an image when you think about yourself. Because when you think about yourself, you're probably hearing things too. You're probably feeling things, tactile. You're probably feeling proprioceptive feelings. You're probably feeling emotional and evaluative feelings. So he wanted to dive deeper into this, but there was more information here about ourselves. And then he thought, well, maybe if we can figure out what this is about, with all of the modalities and all of what we use in NLP modeling, maybe what we can do is, instead of just breaking a habit, maybe we can entirely transform ourselves. And he was absolutely right. When you think about the swish pattern, you're really just canceling out a negative behavior in favor of a better self-image. But again, this is still somewhat vague. And so what he started doing here is breaking down this image and into many component parts, and not attaching it to negative behavior, but thinking about it in terms of, what are the qualities that I value very highly? What are the qualities about anybody, not just myself, but qualities in general that I want to have, like persistence, like authenticity, like tenacity, a good sense of humor, charisma, even being sexy. Any quality you can think of. And he started realizing that that would probably be more powerful than just linking it to behavior, or just linking it to compulsive behavior that you want to change. So what if I want to change the actual qualities about me, especially if I have qualities about me that I don't like I'm cruel, or I'm impatient, or I'm unkind. And a lot of people think these things about themselves. And if you value the opposite, so if you value qualities like kindness, you value persistence, tenacity, being accomplished, any of these things, and you're not experiencing that, this was another thing that Steve realized, this is causing your self-esteem and your confidence to drop. So if you can reverse that and transform these qualities within yourself into certain solid qualities qualities that you have available to you at any time, any place, anywhere, then this would be a much more powerful shift, that this is sort of ultimately what we're really after in anything to do with personal development. Because what that leads to is fulfillment and satisfaction. So many people might think they want money. They might think they want a car. They might think they want a house. And there's nothing wrong with wanting those things. And I say, if you want those things, go for them. If you see the potential to acquire them, definitely go for it. But what you're wanting is fulfillment. You believe that that car, that the money, the house will lead you to some sort of fulfillment of some sort of desire, which is really a fulfillment of a value. Now, if you understand that that's what leads you to the fulfillment of a value, you can take that value and ask yourself, what would this be like as a quality of who I am? And this is where it starts to get really, really powerful. Because if I become the person who has the things that I want first, before trying to get things that I want in order to become something better, become someone better or more improved, this changes the game. This changes everything. So I'm going to repeat that. So think about it like this. What most people are doing, they're wanting to acquire things, and that can be experiences as well. It can also be relationships. It could be material objects. It could be relationships. It could be wonderful experiences. We want to have these things, often because we think if we have them, then that means we are someone of value. We're someone important. We're someone who is accomplished. We're someone who other people look at as being, someone who made something of themselves. But this is where most people are going wrong, because they're approaching it from a place of scarcity. I don't have, so therefore I want. But if we flip this thing and we become that at the identity level, we become the value that we're trying to fulfill, meaning we install that quality, then getting what you want becomes so much easier. In fact, and a lot of times you'll realize there are things that you thought you wanted, but you didn't really want. You thought you wanted it because everybody else wants it. And that's a good thing to know, because you could go chasing something for years, spend endless amounts of money and time only to achieve it, and then not be fulfilled, not be happy with it, not be satisfied at all. So when you understand what it is that you're valuing, the qualities that you value, and then you create those qualities within yourself or strengthen those qualities within yourself, acquiring what it is that you want becomes not something so difficult anymore. I mean, it's important to challenge ourselves. We want to stretch ourselves, but it becomes something that is not based in scarcity or based on the belief that, if I can acquire that, then I will be who I want to be. No, become who you want to be, and then getting those things becomes a lot easier. And then it's not nearly as big of a deal getting them anymore, which makes it easier to get them. So there's one other thing I want to say about the Swish pattern, which also inspired Steve Andreas to make the self-concept model, was he noticed that when you practice the Swish pattern, you only need to practice it, 6 or 7 times while you're doing the process. You don't need to practice it ongoing. Once it's in there, it's in there. And it's even better when it becomes unconscious. It becomes more powerful because you're not thinking about it. When you are tempted by something, a cigarette, and biting your nails, or overeating, you're no longer negotiating with yourself about should I not. If you're in that state of negotiation, then you're tempted, and then you might fall back into the compulsion. But he noticed whenever he would do the Swish pattern successfully with clients, there was no more negotiation. They just stopped doing the compulsive behavior because this pattern would run unconsciously. And that was where he wanted to take self-concept as well, because what do we not want to be? We don't want to be self-conscious. When we're self-conscious, we are dividing our attention. We're actually, in a sense, stepping outside of ourselves and observing ourselves, which if you've recognized yourself doing this at times, it does not help you, especially in a performance. So like if you're giving a public talk, or you're in a sales meeting or a sales appointment, and you're self-conscious and you're sort of like half observing yourself and trying to do the presentation, that this doesn't work very well. It comes out as being nervous. It comes out as not being fully attentive and fully present. But you've also had those times where you're sort of in flow, where you're not thinking about that. You're not thinking about yourself. You're not self-conscious. You're just doing. You're just doing, and you're being. And so understanding how the Swish pattern would go unconscious and alter behavior without the person having to think about it, that's where he wanted to take self-concept. How do we create the most powerful self-concept, the self-concept that has all the qualities that you value, and making all of those qualities very certain and solid, which brings your self-esteem up and also increases your confidence? How can we do all that and then allow it to also be unconscious? And so he created an entire model to do exactly that, which is taking Swish Pattern, a very solid but small process, and then stacking it with all of the components of what creates an entire person's self-concept. He modeled an entire self-concept of how we create our self-concept. And then you build up all these qualities, and then it goes unconscious. And if it's unconscious, you're no longer self-conscious. So you exhibit, you behave in alignment with, you become the qualities that you value most. So you are living your fulfillment. Now, somebody asked me, well, gee, what if I do this and then I become lazy and I don't want to do anything? That's not how it works. When you are living your highest values, you will tap into an enormous amount of potential. And when you can see your potential and it's just laid out in front of you to fulfill, you're not going to turn away from it. That is motivation itself. When you're connected to your values to the degree that they are part of who you are, you don't have to worry about motivation anymore. Motivation just happens. You don't question it. You're not self-conscious. You're not negotiating. You just do it. So you just automatically fulfill your potential without thinking about it, without being conscious about it, without being self-conscious. From Swish Pattern to self-concept model, Steve was a genius, and he made the most powerful NLP model there is. As I mentioned before, if you would like to know how and where to get started with self-concept work, check the link right down below in the description. Click that link and it will take you to an assessment. And that is the first step toward moving in the direction of learning self-concept so that you can use it on yourself. And if you're a coach, of course, you can use it with your clients. As I mentioned before, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I will respond to you. Also, if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe by clicking the subscribe button and the bell so that you'll be notified when I put new videos out. And last but not least, if you can think of a family member or a close friend who you think would benefit from this video, make sure you share it with them. Take care.